Most Canadians know Laura Secord from a chocolate box, which is a little bit like knowing Terry Fox from a running shoe brand. In the summer of 1813, a 37-year-old mother with 5 kids, a bedridden husband, and a pair of house slippers made a decision that may have kept Canada from becoming the 51st state, or the 14th state. Wrong century, but some things never seem to change. She didn't fire a gun. She didn't command troops. She walked 32 kilometers through swamps, through enemy lines, in the dark, and then Canada just forgot about her for 50 years, and then named a candy company after her. A candy company! But this is the real story of Laura Secord, and it's so much better than the chocolate box. Here's the thing that'll surprise you. Laura Secord was born in the United States. Great Barrington, Massachusetts, to be exact. Her father, Thomas, fought for the Americans in the Revolution. He was a full patriot, anti-British all the way. And then, in 1795, he moved the whole family to British Upper Canada for a land grant. Make it make sense, Thomas. But to be fair, Americans have always had a strong opinion about real estate that isn't theirs. Laura stayed in Queenstown when her father eventually moved on. She married James Secord, a loyalist merchant, around 1797. By 1812, they had 5 kids, a general store, and a modest house on the edge of town that was about to become a very bad place to live. James enlisted in the militia. He was good with numbers from running the store, so naturally they put him in charge of the artillery. But on October 13th, 1812, the Americans crossed the Niagara River, and James got shot twice, shoulder and knee. Laura walked onto that active battlefield and dragged him home. She was that kind of woman. The following summer, the Americans came back. This time, they took the whole town. They moved into people's homes, demanded food, demanded beds, demanded to be treated like guests. Basically, this was the world's worst Airbnb situation. No checkout date, 0 stars. The Secords, husband still recovering and Laura running everything, was forced to house and feed the soldiers of the army that had nearly killed James 8 months earlier. Just smile and pass the potatoes, Laura. One evening, in late June, an American officer named Captain Cyrenius Chapin sat down at Laura's kitchen table. He was furious because a British lieutenant named Fitzgibbon had been raiding American positions from a small outpost 32 kilometers away at a place called DeQ House. Chapin had a plan to deal with Fitzgibbon. He also had too much to drink. He talked. Laura listened. 500 American soldiers heading for Fitzgibbon's 50 surprise attack. The outposts would be wiped out. The Niagara frontier would fall, and Canada would be one step closer to becoming a large, very cold American state. Someone had to warn Fitzgibbon. James couldn't walk. There was nobody else. So Laura went. She left at dawn on June 22nd. She couldn't use the roads. American patrols were everywhere. So she went through the fields, through the forest, through the thing that maps cheerfully called the Black Swamp. 32 kilometers, June heat, house slippers, the 1813 equivalent of running a marathon in flip-flops through a construction site. She lost one of her slippers somewhere in the mud, but she kept walking anyways, because of course she did. She crossed streams, pushed through dense bush, skirted around American positions. One wrong turn and she's captured. One wrong turn, she never comes home. And then, late in the evening, deep in the forest near DeQ Falls, she walked directly into a group of Haudenosaunee warriors. In the dark, alone, one shoon. A Kaigua warrior named John Tutela remembered the moment decades later. He said she just stood there, exhausted, lost, half destroyed by the journey, and she did not even flinch. They figured out quickly that she was not a threat. John Tutela said, after we realized that she was a friend, we all walked up and shook her hand. They walked her the rest of the way to see Fitzgibbon. Now, quick detour. There was no cow. The famous story about Laura bringing a cow for camouflage, milking it in front of American sentries, is completely made up. A writer named William Coffin invented it in 1864 for a book. The real story does not need a cow. The real story has a one-shoed woman staring down warriors in a dark forest and not blinking. A cow would have only slowed her down. Fitzgibbon had 2 days before the Americans arrived. They'd been delayed by their own logistics. Even in 1813, Americans are great at announcing a mission, but struggling with an execution. On June 24th, 500 American soldiers marched towards Beaver Dams expecting a surprise attack on a tiny outpost. Instead, they got ambushed from both sides by Haudenosaunee warriors. After hours of fighting, Fitzgibbon walked out under a flag of truce and essentially lied to the American commander's face, implying that his forces were enormous, and that gave them the choice that they took. 462 Americans surrendered, but just 50 British soldiers and their allies, one of the most lopsided victories of the entire war. Canada won, manifest destiny still 0. Fitzgibbon wrote in his battle report that night, yet Laura Secord's name appeared nowhere in it, not once. Great work, James. Really appreciate it, James. Enjoy your promotion, James. Laura went home, back to the wounded husband, back to the 5 kids, back to the looted house and the destroyed store. She said nothing publicly. You don't tend to take credit for military intelligence operations when the war is not over and the Americans are still next door plotting their next open house. James never properly recovered. The store was gone and money was tight. Laura petitioned the government for recognition, for a pension, for literally any acknowledgement of what she had done. And this was refused repeatedly. Fitzgibbon did write letters on her behalf in 1820, 1827, and 1837, confirming that she saved his outpost, confirming the victory would not have happened without her. The government nodded politely and did nothing. James died in 1841, and his pension died with him. Laura was 65, alone and nearly broke. She kept going, taught school from her house, petitioned again. In 1860, the Prince of Wales visited Queenstown Heights for a veterans ceremony. Laura Secord was the only woman on the list. She was 85 years old. The future King of England gave her £100 and moved on to the next stop of his tour. That was it. That was the full extent of any official recognition she received in her lifetime. £100 and a royal handshake for saving Canada. You think that would be worth at least a decent pension, but apparently not. But don't worry, Laura. In 50 years, someone will name a chocolate company after you. And that's basically the same thing, isn't it? In 1913, 100 years after the walk, a candy company founder named Frank O'Connor needed a name that felt patriotic. He called it Laura Secord Chocolates. By the 1970s, it was the largest candy retailer in Canada. The woman, who died nearly broke, who was refused recognition by the country she risked her life for, who had walked 32 kilometers through a swamp with one shoe to warn a man who did not even put her name in his report, became a chocolate brand. She never saw a cent of it. Today, there are statues, stamps, a commemorative quarter, a museum in her Queenstown home, and schools across the country bearing her name. Better late than never, Canada, which I can say seems to be our national motto. But here's what I want you to remember. Not the chocolate, not the statues. Remember a 37-year-old mother standing alone in a dark forest, one shoe gone, having walked all day through enemy territory, face to face with warriors she had never met, and she did not turn back. Canada exists in part because of that moment. This is North of Famous. What is your excuse?